and welcome. Today I am going to be working with 3 different kinds of products: Jesmonite, Eco Pour, and Plaster. All the links to the products I'll be using today are in the description below. If at any point in time the speed of the video is too fast, just click on the instructional video on directions on how to slow it down. Let's get started. First, I'm going to be working with Plaster. For those of you who have been on my channel before, there are several other videos I have where I've worked with Plaster, so you can always reference those as well. But first I'm adding about 2 to 3 ounces of water into a cup. Then I'm adding some Appel wood glue and stirring that well. Next I'm going to slowly add my plaster into that mix. I'll keep adding until the water glue combination will no longer take any additional plaster, at which time you'll let it sit for a little bit and then mix it well. And you want to mix it until it's about the consistency of what you would use for pancakes. And for this project, I am doing a test of some pigment. I want to see how the Jesmonite and the Eco Pour and the plaster take pigment. So I will be actually using the same number of drops for each of these, just so I can see the difference between which of these mediums actually takes the pigment the best, or gives me the type of look that I'm going for. So I'm just adding those to my mixing stick and just doing a quick swirl. Next, I'll add this to the mold and shake it to get rid of any air pockets. And I'm only doing a little at a time, so that gives me an opportunity to actually shake the mold and then squeeze at the bottom to make sure that the plaster has reached the entire mold. The next product I'm using is Eco Pour. That is a mixing ratio of 100 to 35. So they give an example on the bag: 100 grams of powder and 35 grams of water. So I'm first measuring out my water, and I'm doing 90 grams of that. Next, I'm measuring out the powder. I'm doing 290 grams of the powder, at which point then you will actually mix the powder into the water. Now that my powder has been measured, I'm mixing it into the water like I had said, and I'm only adding a small amount, not as slow as I would for plaster, but not just dumping it in either. Then just let it sit for a little while so you can actually see that Eco Pour absorb into the water. And then I'm adding the same amount of pigment to my stick and doing a quick swirl, and I'm just doing the same exact method that I did for the plaster to add this to the mold, just a little at a time, shaking to get rid of bubbles and filling it to the top. The last product I'll be using today is Jesmonite, which has a mix ratio of 2.5 to 1. So first I'm going to measure out my liquid, and I'm measuring out 120-ish grams of the liquid and 300 grams of the powder. And with Jesmonite, you want to mix that where you're just adding a small amount to the liquid and doing a stir. Do not dump it all at one time. Think about like when you're making cookies and you're adding flour, similar type of process. And you want to mix that until it's smooth. The consistency, again, will probably be a little bit thinner than cake batter. I then added the same amount of pigment to my stick, and I'm using the same process as before with adding the liquid to the mold, and just ensuring that I'm shaking the mold to get rid of any air pockets and squeezing at the bottom to make sure it's dispersed fully into the mold. And then allow it to cure per the manufacturer's instructions. Once it's ready, go ahead and demold. The first one I'm demolding is the Jesmonite, and this one really took pigment well. The second one that I am attempting to demold is the Eco Pour. This one seemed to fade quite a bit. It actually has a similar texture to plaster. The last one is the plaster, which actually took the pigment a lot better than the Eco Pour. The Eco Pour does seem to have a better shore hardness though than the plaster. I do think though that you would need a lot more pigment if you would like for it to color similarly to the Jesmonite. And the plaster I have worked with several times. You can actually pigment this with pretty much anything, but it didn't take as well with the pigment as the Jesmonite did, which is very interesting considering Jesmonite is notorious for not taking pigment. So this experiment had an interesting result. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please do not forget to like, subscribe, share, and press the bell if you'd like to be alerted to future videos.